For young people in search of opportunities, the connection between sports and education has become even more crucial, whether for personal development or getting scholarships. But there's also a growing divide in access to opportunity between wealthy communities and some of Boston's neighborhoods. One response to that is a program in Roxbury called The Base. To tell us how it's working and adjusting to the pandemic are its founder and president, Robert Lewis Jr., and its Boston site director, Lori DiPina. I'd like to thank you both very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Robert, you had your own adjustment to COVID-19 to deal with. Talk about how that changed things and what you're doing at the base.
Yeah, I think it's a lot, Chris. It was a little over a year ago today when we pulled our staff together, and what we realized was we were going to have to just close down. And we were thinking at that time for about 4 to 6 weeks. It was March 16th and saying, hey, let's get through this. March 22nd, I went in to just, because I wasn't feeling well myself, and I ended up getting hospitalized myself and, placed on a ventilator and for 12 days and had to do 2 weeks of rehab and then at home for a few months. But while that was going on, our organization realized that we had to pivot. Even though our young folks weren't here, but we had to figure out how do we provide resources to them. So, Laurie and our team turned around and we were doing more around food, getting families gift cards and things of that nature. We're making sure our young folks are going to have access to technology if they need it, or how to turn the technology on. And just really during this time, we realized slowly we started bringing our young folks back. They were actually outside, which was great with the weather. But we were doing more around food access, Chris. We actually realized that we needed to do something around closing the learning gap. And we partnered with EBA, the Y, and Latinos for Education to create a learning pod for our young folks to be able to have teachers in the classroom to make sure that that learning gap wasn't going to continue to widen. And we've made sure that we continue with academic and education and wanted to ensure that the pandemic wouldn't prevent our high school seniors from still going through the high school process and others. I'd like to say we're a better organization a year later because of the pandemic, but also how we have to make sure that we're adapting, adjusting to the racial reckoning that's happening around the country and making sure that folks are seeing that urban talent in Roxbury, Dorchester, and Mattapan is America's talent. So let's not stop investing in the talent base of our young people. And that's where the services and programs that Laurie and team have continued with.
Lori, I know that some of the usual sports activities have been curtailed somewhat, but on the other hand, the activities that Robert just mentioned, when you had young people who can take part in that and sort of come out of their shell a little bit, what did you see that doing for their morale or even their mental health?
Sure. And we started the esports team, which is different for us. And just seeing the young people just playing together, their leadership skills started to come out. It was that camaraderie of being together and really working on a project was wonderful to see. We still operated our sports program. And being away for 6 months and then coming back into the building and just being around themselves, their teammates was huge for them. We had to open 7 days a week. We start at 2:30 in the morning and we don't end until 9 at night. And it was just good. It was them being around each other because I didn't think they didn't realize how depressed they were getting staying in their house. And you learn that way in your bedroom. You were doing activities in your bedroom. You didn't get out and see your teammates. So it was good to see them come back.
Robert, what about esports? When I think of the base, I think of real baseball, a real playing field, human beings running on the base paths. So what about esports? Does that really help with development for young people?
I'll share one thing, Chris, for folks to know. Besides our baseball, about a year and a half ago, we added basketball, so we have base hoops, a lot around girls. But this is an added addition, and Laurie and her team, it's been tremendous. Not just about the esports, but the skills that these kids have learned around marketing, branding, public speaking, positioning in the competition. And Laurie, maybe you can explain a little bit of how we're doing that. But I just think it's a phenomenal opportunity of skill-based learning for our young people.
Lori, what about that, especially for the young women involved in this program?
Yeah, so it was a little bit difficult to get them back into the building when their parents didn't really want them to, during the pandemic, come out of the household. A lot of them had gained weight during the pandemic. So we really kind of pivoted. We had a fitness class for them to get back in. We still run our girls program on Wednesdays and Saturday mornings. That's for softball. And then we just added hoops to our program. So, and they do esports, but not so much for the gaming part of it, but for the academics. So we call it augmented ed. So they learn marketing, branding, website design. They do codings in and out. So they really attracted to the educational piece of it. A lot of them, we have some women who have like little side businesses like braiding hair. So they developed a website. They developed cards that they gave out to their friends so they could marketing. Some of the girls used it as tools to for recruitment for softball. So they have their website up. We have some videos of them playing the sport. So it was good to see, not so much on the gaming side, but on the education piece.
Robert, what I'm hearing here is that the young people are getting a chance to shift their focus. They're not just locked into the inner circle of their own neighborhood and family, and they're getting something that they're not getting in the school. How would you describe that?
Here's the thing, Chris. Talent is everywhere. Access and opportunities aren't. We need to make sure that our kids are getting access to opportunities from esports and others. Some of the other things we've been doing over the years, a lot of work around workforce development. Chris, we look at Boston. Boston is the mecca around healthcare, education, life sciences, arts and culture. We're also trying to expose our young folks to those industries, those cultures through internships, remote tours and visits. That's been the great thing about the remote learning is because we can do things like we just did with the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum a week ago. Our thing, Chris, is we have to stop looking at urban cities and urban young folks in a deficit model. They are tremendous assets, and we are fundamentally accountable and responsible to ensure that our kids are going to get all of the resources they need because their zip code, their socioeconomic status, their race and ethnicity should not be the factors that people use to hold them back. We're using that, their resiliency, their hard work and dedication to move them forward. So that's why it wasn't just opening the building. It was about the quality resources and services that we needed to make sure that we continue to provide our young folks. Because guess what? The school year soon is going to end. Our juniors and seniors have to start getting ready for like college or workforce or job training or summer jobs. And we had to equip them with those tools and resources that they needed or that they need to continue to move forward.
Lori, it's been said very often that when girls are growing up and approaching their teens, they're getting all these messages from popular culture about what gets validated. But you validate them in other ways. How important is that for what they want to do later?
Yeah, so we do a lot of work around that. The young ladies don't see themselves any different from the men in the building. Sometimes they train with them. They're athletes. They want to be seen as athletes. So we train them the same way that we would train our men. They probably work a little bit harder. If there is any self-esteem, we bring them right in. But I think the biggest thing is just to teach them that they're no different from anybody else out there. They tend to gravitate a lot more to the academic side, though. They take part in our career development series. They college development. We don't see it, and I think it's us and our trainers don't teach them any different. They're base student athletes. So I think that's the biggest thing for us.
And I think one thing, Chris, that would be important is when you look at our staff and our team and, from Laurie as the site director and our program staff at Cassidy Goldwick, folks on our board, we want to position women who are very successful throughout our community and throughout our region in the diverse sectors that our young women get to know and to get access to. So last week we had Darlene Gordon, who's the interim athletic director at UMass Boston, come on in and speak to our young women. We want to make sure that our young women are seeing that there's leaders out there that are striving and working hard that they could actually emulate. And as Laurie says, to be like, the baseball is what got us off the ground, but we want to make sure that the basketball, the esports, and the softball is all part of this continuous effort. But at the end, the academic preparation and readiness. And like I say at the end, Chris, we have to get our young folks ready for this 21st century economy. They need to be part of it. They need to be part of the jobs and the career opportunities. And we want to keep that talent drain here in Boston and not to lose that to some other city.
Well, Murphy, you get a lot more bats working in their favor right now. What does that mean?
Yes, we launched this great partnership about a little over a week ago with a company called Mind Bats out of Dallas, Texas. Gentleman Pete O'Brien reached out and had some bats to donate. And we said, hey, Pete, what you really need to be thinking about is how to level the playing field, how to ensure that all young folks have access to the highest quality of equipment. And I was surprised that Pete decided, hey, I want to fly into Boston and let's announce this. So we're excited about Mind Bats. It ties into our partnerships with, Franklin Sports and what we're doing with Converse and others. But our kids deserve to have some of the best quality equipment. And then we had Pete speak to the girls too, because he said next year he's going to be building girls softball bats, and he wants to partner with the base and our young women to help design the models of those softball bats. So, we're excited about these partnerships. We're excited about things, but at the end of it too, Chris, we want to make sure that our young folks will have access to those jobs and careers as well in these sporting industries, on top of receiving just the products and the goods.
Lori, all this pep talk will mean maybe some other people might want to step up to the plate. So how can they pursue that?
How can they pursue? Say that one more time.
Is there a place they can go online and get some more information?
Yes. So they can go right to our website. It's www.thebase.org.
Great. Well, thank you both very much for taking the time to be with us.
Chris,
Thank you so much
for all you do and for supporting our efforts.
Great. Thank you. Good to see you again, Robert. That's Robert Lewis and Lori DiPina from The Base.